So, Doctor Who Wish World. Let's talk about it. This episode was interesting. I liked it more and more as it went on. I was kind of confused at the beginning about, okay, what's going on? We're obviously in an alternate world, which probably tells me we're just going to get a big reset button in the next part, Reality War. Russell loves his reset buttons. But it's an interesting alternate world. It has that very 50s, 60s retro vibe to it, which, considering it's Conrad's wish that's being enhanced, I could see Conrad thinking that's an ideal world. The way he thinks, that the world was so much better back then. Everybody had these little jobs. It does have that very Dick Van Dyke but twisted feel to it. And I can see Conrad having that thought pattern. We see that later when he's talking with, at work with his coworker. Was it Ibrahim? Is that his name? The colonel, the one who's usually the colonel. And when he mentions, oh, you're a beautiful man, he's like, wait, what did you say? Again, you could see Conrad, that being the kind of world where even a man complimenting another man would be seen as that kind of problematic. Again, I could see Conrad thinking that way, that's his ideal kind of ideal world. And even Conrad mentions when Mrs. Flood's talked to him that he's trying to make the world a better place. So I understand why the world looks like it does because of Conrad's way of thinking. That's interesting. It's realized really well on the screen too, the way they realize it, the way they do the cinematography. This season has just been very, very visually impressive. That continues here. The way they do the aesthetic and the way they make it look with the pink TVs and the colors. It kind of has those colors kind of like Dot and Bubble does, with a kind of retro vibe to it, which is always interesting to see. I loved the shots we got of Kate O'Mara. That meant a lot to me, especially with Kate no longer with us. And I love Kate O'Mara's The Rani. I love Mark of the Rani a lot. It's my favorite Colin story. And I like Time of the Rani. Time of the Rani is an underrated story. It's not McCoy's best story, but it is an underrated story. It's definitely better than Delta and the Bannerman. And I love Kate O'Mara in this role. And I like the Rani. Because Kate O'Mara always just looks like she's having a good time. She looks like she's happy to be there. She likes doing this kind of work. It's fun. I've seen the behind-the-scenes scene sometime on set when someone's telling her not quite so much camp, and she's like, I thought it was a camp show, because she does do it a little over the top sometimes, but it's always this deliciously fun camp. If I ever had to describe her performance, it's just deliciously fun. I don't know why, that's the word that comes to my head, deliciously. I absolutely love her performance, and so I loved seeing her on screen, which the new era has done that, where it kind of will show a flashback, like of the Toy Maker, or flashback to Midnight. I like seeing that visual representation on screen. And so I like not getting just one, but I think it does like 3 really nice shots of Kate O'Mara. It feels, one, it lets the audience know, oh, a returning villain. The Rani's a returning villain, if they haven't picked up from that from, in the past week from the Interstellar Song Contest online. And 2, it feels like they're paying respect to Kate O'Mara. Like a nice tip of the hat. Which I liked. I really enjoyed that. I think the new actress, is her name Archie? I'm not quite sure her name. But I like her in the role. I'm not familiar with her other work. But I'm enjoying her in the role. I feel like she's putting a little bit of Kate into her performance while doing her own thing with it. It feels like, I get the impression she's watched the Rani's previous stories, or at least clips of Kate's performance. Now, I don't know if that's true, but and maybe it's just projection, but I feel like when I'm watching her play the Rani, I'm seeing a little bit of Kate's performance in there. And I definitely mean that in an amazing way. And I like that, and I just like her performance as the Rani as well. I think she's one of my favorite parts of the episode is her playing the Rani. And I like it. And I like Mrs. Flood having a little bit of being slightly annoyed at being subservient to the Rani a little bit. When she's making the sound, she's like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I like that there's a little bit of that there. where she might not be the happy-go-lucky subservient assistant or assistant companion. It's like, you know, the Doctor has a companion, the Rani has a companion. I like the fact that she might not be 100% on board with that role. That's interesting to me. And I do like the fact that when they introduce themselves, they do kind of introduce themselves equally as the Rani at the end of the Doctor when he's, not quite when he remembers, but when he's on his knees and they're both like, we are the Rani, we by generated. I kind of like that they're a little more presented as equals there. I enjoyed that. The scene when Belinda can't remember Poppy being born, that's really interesting. I really enjoyed that scene. Mel doesn't really have much to do in this episode. Mel's just kind of there. I'm always happy to see Bonnie. I am. That's great. But she didn't really have a lot to do this episode. Hopefully she'll get more next episode. I had hoped for a little more of Susan, especially since Susan's in the credits. And maybe there was more she was supposed to be in this episode originally that got cut, you know, for time. I think we'll get more of her in the next episode, honestly. I do. So I would have liked to have seen a little more of Susan, but to be fair, I don't really think that would have fit in too well with the narrative. It was interesting to see Rogue again. I like the actor who plays Rogue. I'm not a big fan of that episode very much. But I liked the actor who plays him. He always plays the role well, and what little bit of time we get with him here, he nails his part. Ncuti Gat was putting in a good performance in this episode, because there's a lot of this episode where he's either under the sway of the world, where he's having to play that. He's either having to do the slight doubting, or he's having to do the bits when there's a lot of doubt. And he nails all of those really well. I like his little swagger with the umbrella. It's always nice to see the Doctor holding an umbrella, so his swagger with the umbrella in one scene's fun. Millie Gibson continues to be amazing as Ruby Sunday. Millie Gibson is a fantastic actress, especially as young as she is. And I'm looking forward to seeing what we get with her next week. It was nice seeing her meeting up with Shirley and Shirley's group. It was nice to see Shirley get some stuff to do. Shirley, for the most part, to me, has just kind of been a, well, she's there kind of character. She's never really had a lot to do. So I like the fact she had a little more to do in this episode. That was nice. I like the little circle when they're all discussing their doubt. And it's interesting to realize, because I thought at first maybe Ruby was the only one that actually knew what was going on and that the world had changed. But finding out that even she doesn't have all the pieces. She just has those little bits where she knows something's wrong, little fragments she can't quite put together. That was interesting. And then finding out the other people are like that, usually disabled people, because they don't fit into Conrad's vision. His idyllic world would not have disabled people in it, which again says a lot about Conrad's way of thinking. And so because Conrad doesn't picture a world with people who have disabilities, and he probably wouldn't picture one with Ruby because he doesn't like Ruby, that they're able to kind of slip through his world and see visions of what came before. I find that fascinating. It's kind of odd. He tells stories about Doctor Who. I don't quite get that, but that's interesting. I did enjoy actually meeting Belinda's mom and aunt. That was interesting. Again, that whole scene with her not remembering Poppy's birth was an interesting scene. I enjoyed that scene. Him learning about the cups going through the tables to distract people, because tables don't do that. That's interesting. I really thought it was interesting, the people calling each other in. That's for me, I connect with that because that makes you think of Fahrenheit 451, 1984. Germans turning on their neighbors in World War II, turning their neighbors in. Things like that where, anyone can betray you. Like in, again, 1984, it could be your neighbor. It could be your own children turned against you if you speak out against the party. There was definitely some Orwellian, Bradbury, and again, real life connections there that I was connecting to maybe more than the average audience member would. But I love 1984. And so when I was seeing those scenes when, wife calling husband, mother calling daughter, it was really connecting me with just how dangerous those situations are and how, if we're not careful as a society, we could slip into things like that actually happening. And so that was interesting to see here, where you never quite know who you could trust And then, of course, the ending was interesting. I liked listening to the Rani explain her plan and how, like I figured, she was using the Doctor with the Vindicator bit. I had already caught on to that. I mentioned in a previous review, I think in the Illustrator Song Contest review. And even before that, I think I had talked about it. And then the reveal, spoilers, going into spoilers, as if I hadn't already, of them trying to bring back Omega. That's interesting. I don't mind that because it's not the first time you thought Omega was dead and they brought him back. I actually suspected it might be Omega when it mentioned the one who was lost. Because Arc of Infinity, Michael Goff's Time Lord, I believe, says that too. You know, the one who was lost. I feel like he said that in there. I should be able to remember better. I love Arc of Infinity. It's a very underrated story. And, you know, that's how it was in Arc of Infinity. The Doctor was surprised to see Omega because he thought Omega had died in the Three Doctors. So it makes sense that, you know, the Doctor thought Omega was dead, but surprise, Omega's back. That's not the first time that's happened. I'm okay with that. I loved that we got... it took me a second, but I was like, I do believe that's Stephen Thorne I'm hearing. When you could hear Omega's voice, and I love that they took, you know, I am Omega. Omega shall be free. I love Stephen Thorne as Omega. I do. I mean, the guy who voiced Omega in Arc of Infinity is great, too. And I like the fact they used different voice actors and different costumes to kind of keep who that was a secret in Arc of Infinity. I actually like that choice. I love both performances of Omega. But especially with Stephen Thorne having passed away, it was really nice to hear Stephen Thorne's voice again, because that does sound like they were using a couple sound bits from the Three Doctors there. That did put a smile on my face. I'm fine with Omega coming back, depending on what they do with him. Because I love the Three Doctors. It's arguably my favorite multi-Doctor story. And I really like Arc of Infinity a lot. I think it's an underrated story, especially with the updated effects. Arc of Infinity does have optional updated effects from its DVD release, which is also on the Season 20 Blu-ray, and they do help the story a bit. Plus, the Amsterdam location filming is fantastic. They use location filming in Amsterdam for Arc of Infinity. Great story. So, barring what they do with him in the Reality War, I could be really happy with that. Of course, considering what they did with Sutekh and Empire of Death, I could also be really upset with that. We'll see what they do there. Also, I'm kind of surprised we didn't see Omega. Maybe they're saving whatever his new design will be for the reveal in the Reality War, but I kind of figured we would have seen him at the end, kind of like we did with Sutekh. So I'm a little surprised there. It'd be interesting to see what they do with it. But I had already started kind of thinking, the one who was lost, I wonder if that's Omega. So when she said Omega, I was like, we'll see. I was disappointed with Empire of Death. We'll see. It had a nice cliffhanger with everything going wrong, though. So this episode was all right. It wasn't bad, but how this episode lands with me is going to depend on the next episode. It's kind of like how I liked Legend of Ruby Sunday the first time I saw it, but then after Empire of Death, it kind of retroactively hurts Legend of Ruby Sunday because it is a two-parter, so we've only got half the story. So how I feel about this episode is going to depend on the next episode. But as it was a nice, enjoyable watch. I especially like those last few minutes when everything starts picking up. That's when it gets interesting to me. And I did love how it showed the Doctor remembering how it illustrated that with us getting flashes of previous Doctors. I like when we do that, but especially in a situation like this where it's not just fan service, it actually is part of the plot, because that's basically showing the audience him getting his memories back, getting flashes of Hartnell all the way through David Tennant again, the 14th Doctor. And that works, and with it intercutting of that look on Ncuti Gatwa's face, when you can tell he's getting his memories back. So it's nice to have a nice little nostalgic flashback with my previous Doctors, while it also having a good reason in the plot while it's there. So it's not just fan service nostalgia. While it can also be fan service nostalgia, it's not there just for that. It actually serves a plot point, which I really liked. So I enjoyed this one well enough. I hope Mel gets more to do. I want to find out more about Poppy. That seemed like a final line there. It's like she didn't realize Poppy was real. There's got to be something there. And I want to see more of Susan. And then I also want to see... I want to see why the Rani wants to bring Omega back. Like, is it an experiment thing, or does she have a reason? I still don't quite get all of her motivation, but why she wants to bring Omega back. I don't think I quite got that. I like that there's an interesting little backstory there between the Rani and the Doctor. When she talks about how they danced together during a battle or something, they claimed we were lovers. Do you remember if we were? Now, keep in mind, the Rani could be lying. She's very much someone who could lie. Or it could be interesting to see if there's more history between them. Because even in Mark of the Rani and Time in the Rani, it's very obvious they're familiar with each other. They went to academy together. They're supposed to have been in the same, I think, academy class. So they talk to each other like they know each other very well. So it's not like they were just only loosely familiar with each other. They've always had, even in Mark of the Rani, the way they talk seems like they're very familiar with each other, not just a passing acquaintance. So that doesn't bother me. I don't think that's not going to be like a lore change that upsets me. Right there. It's interesting watching them dance too. So I'm curious to see where all the next episode is going to go. And I hope Ruby and her group get a little more to do. I'm sure they will. So, Wish World, what do you think of it? Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There is a link to that down there. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney, Sam Venning, Finn Perkins, and Unknown289. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons and my YouTube members. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. I love getting fan mail. It makes my day. I have a link to my Amazon wish list down there. A link to my Amazon UK wish list is down there as well. Check those out. Most importantly, thank you for watching.